Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the first public outreach meeting, the first public meeting for the Douglas Street Pedestrian Bridge. And we are going to wait a couple of minutes for other folks who want to join that are just running a little late. We'll wait for them just a few minutes. So if you can bear with us, we'll get started here in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. If you're just joining us, thank you so much. This is the first public meeting for the Douglas Street Pedestrian Bridge. We will get started here in just 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. We're just waiting for some additional folks who may want to join in and listen to the presentation and ask any questions they might have. We're just waiting for some additional folks to join. So we'll get started here at 6:35. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are presenting tonight the Douglas Street Pedestrian Bridge Project. And we are so pleased that you could join us to listen to the presentation, and then also ask any questions you may have. This is hosted by the District Department of Transportation, as well as the construction manager, and myself. My name is Shayna Vieira. I'm the public outreach coordinator for the project. So as we move forward, I'm just going to kind of quickly go over some housekeeping items that I do have to read about the virtual public meeting, and then I will kind of pass the buck over to David, who is the program manager or project manager, who will kind of introduce the project and the agenda. Okay, so to begin, we'll review some basic controls to help you participate on this platform. Please note this is an open meeting, and as required by DC Code 2-578, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to the public. The video file will be shared on the project team's website, YouTube channel within 7 days after this meeting has ended. This meeting is being live streamed to DDOT's Facebook page. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not speak. You may enter any questions or comments in the Q&A, which we will review shortly. If you need technical support during this meeting, please call 202-309-3491. To use the WebEx audio and video for audio muting, everyone is on mute right now. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the Q&A and comment period. This helps to ensure the meeting runs smoothly and there are no auditory disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you will need to use the raise hand feature, which we will cover shortly. For video, your video camera is off by default and you will not be able to share video. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can send it via the Q&A feature. This is enabled. To send a question, the three-dot icon in the bottom right section of the WebEx window, you can click that and select Q&A. A panel or window will appear. In the Ask field, select All Panelists. Click the text, sorry, if you can go back. You click the text box to type the question and press enter in the key to send it. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, and with that, I will turn this over to David, who will present the team and the agenda for tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about that. I had a little problem muting myself. My name is David Takor. I'm program manager for wards 7 and 8. Joined DDOT late 2017 when this project was advanced, I think about 70% through its design phase and about 50% through its acquisition phase. That's the acquisition of the properties that we need to demolish to make way for the new bridge. The new bridge that is required because of structural deficiencies associated with the existing bridge, and to incorporate safety improvements so that this bridge will span entirely across the from one side to the other without having to traverse the service roads. I acknowledge that we have not held a meeting in quite a while. When I joined DDOT, I got involved in the completion of the design and the acquisition process, and then I got involved in the preparation process with the utility providers. Essentially, PEPCO had to come in and relocate. You'll have seen this work ongoing in the last year or so. Relocate their lines to provide clearance to the bridge. They ordered and purchased some especially high poles to achieve that. So The whole of the acquisition process and utility relocation, it took most of the past 3 to 4 years to complete. We're introducing this public meeting as early as possible during the construction timetable to give you a heads up, prepare you, the stakeholders, for the upcoming project. And we are expediting the project to accommodate the lane bridge replacement within the mayor's specified time period of 3 years. That is being designed at the moment. We're at 65% design on that project, and we're going to be expediting that to see if we can bring it into the field later this year. What we don't want to do is have any conflicts between the MOT for both projects running at the same time, hence the need to move forward with this project and make way for that project to complete it within the 3-year period. With that, I'll hand it over to the project team, who are doing everything they can to mitigate and minimize the impact on our stakeholders. And thank you. Over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I'll take it from here at the beginning. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Graff, Construction Manager with HNTB, and together with my colleague, Chris Vovak, we'll be helping DDOT deliver this important project in Ward 7. Quickly here, you see the agenda on the screen, so thank you, David, for that welcome. I'll quickly show the project team, and then we just want to give you an overview of the project, talk about the timeline to complete construction. We'll discuss what the public can expect during construction. And finally, we'll pass on some further information about how you can stay connected to the project. So this is the project team. David spoke, and the rest of the DDOT team for IPMD Team 4 here includes Patrick and Charles. The engineer of record for this bridge is Jacobs, who is the designer. So mentioned HNTB and JDOS, we're performing construction management and public outreach services for DDOT. And the construction contractor is Fort Myers Construction. So the purpose of this project is to replace the existing pedestrian bridge over DC 295 and Kennelworth Avenue, which is highlighted in red here on the map. This is one of just a few pedestrian bridges that provides access across the DC 295 corridor. The existing bridge was constructed in the 1950s and has a vertical clearance over the roadway that does not meet current standards. Additionally, accessing the bridge requires pedestrians to cross the Kennelworth Avenue service roads. Thereby, this creates an additional interaction between pedestrians and vehicles. So the objectives of this project include increasing the vertical clearance over the roadway to meet current standards, provide ADA compliant access across Kenilworth Avenue and DC 295 via new access ramps on both sides of the bridges. And finally, since this is a complete replacement of the existing bridge, we're improving the structural integrity of this important pedestrian crossing that was initially constructed decades ago. So I just want to take a further look at a few more elements, starting with the bridge itself. The new bridge will be a prefabricated steel truss. And what this means is that's going to be manufactured off-site and will not be delivered to the project until it's time for installation. The bridge and the access ramps are comprised of 8 spans supported by 7 concrete piers. The new bridge will have a vertical clearance of 17 feet, 6 inches minimum over the roadway, and this will now meet the current federal and DDOT requirements. The width of the new pedestrian walkway will be increased to 12 feet and contain a welded wire safety mesh for the safety of the pedestrians as well as the vehicles below the bridge. And one of the key improvements of the project is that the bridge will span not only the DC 295 portion, but also the Kenilworth Avenue service roads. Again, this is important because we're eliminating that at-grade pedestrian crossing there with the service roads. What you see on the screen here is a rendering of the proposed condition. You can see the new structural steel truss, and encompassing that is that welded wire fabric mesh. Also like to note just how much wider the pedestrian pathway is for this bridge than the existing. Okay, now I just wanted to speak a bit more to the bridge access in more detail. I think this is really one of the key features, and it's going to be very noticeable once these new access ramps are under construction. So the new access ramps will be constructed similarly to the bridge using the structural steel truss and the concrete piers. These new ramps will provide ADA compliant access, again, without the need for pedestrians to cross at grade along the service roads. Additionally, the project is also going to construct concrete staircases adjacent to the access ramps for an alternative access to the bridge. So taking a look at the west side of the project, and I really want to share this slide more just to show exactly where the new access ramps will be located. This is at the intersection of Kennelworth Avenue southbound service road. If you see where my cursor is here, this is Douglas Street itself. So right where these existing trees are in this grass lot, that's where the new west access ramp is going. In fact, you may have seen our crews out there doing some light clearing here, taking down some trees and putting in erosion and sediment controls. The graphic on the bottom is taken directly from our construction plan, so I understand it may be a bit cumbersome to look at here. But again, what I'm trying to show is you can kind of see this isn't a plan view, so looking down on the access ramp. Just the layout of that ramp, where it is in regards to Douglas Street, which is here, and Kenilworth Avenue southbound. Also in this view here, you can see the concrete staircase. Okay, this is over on the east side. Something important to note here is that in order to construct the east access ramp and concrete stairs, the project will demolish these two existing buildings right at the intersection of Polk and the northbound Kenilworth Avenue service road. And again, another screenshot from the plans just to orientate yourself. Polk Street is right here where my cursor's at. Here's a northbound Kenilworth access road. Kind of see the path of the new access ramp leading to the bridge. And there are the concrete stairs adjacent to Polk Street. And finally, for kind of a general overview of the project and what the scope of work is, I just want to highlight some of the safety improvements that we're undertaking. We are going to install new high visibility signage and pavement markings. This includes at the crosswalks of both Douglas Street and Polk Street, both sides of the bridge. The new bridge itself, as well as the access ramps, will be ADA compliant, and both the ramps and the bridge will have new LED lighting for pedestrian visibility during nighttime. And again, I hit on it a few times, probably the most key safety feature of the project is that it's going to span over Kenilworth Avenue service roads as well as DC 295. So again, we're removing that at-grade pedestrian crossing along the service roads. So that's a general overview of what the project's going to accomplish. I'm going to pass it over to Chris Vovak, resident engineer, talk a bit about the project schedule.
Thanks, Andy. So let's get into the construction timeline. The Douglas Street pedestrian bridge has an expedited construction schedule of 12 months. The work is broken down into different phases. Currently, we are in the pre-phase work and soon to get into the 3 construction phases. So let's break all these phases down in more detail. Now we're going to talk about what exactly is going to go on in the phases and how it will impact the public. We are currently in pre-phase work for the project and will continue till early spring. This consists of currently working on upgrading water main and also sanitary sewer work. A large part of this pre-work phase is the construction of the West Bridge Pier. This will include a lot of activities that include bringing in a large caisson machine to drill for the below grade foundations, lots of rebar placement with formwork, and lastly, lots of concrete trucks for the pouring of in-place concrete structures. Lastly, there will be improvements for the sidewalks and crosswalks along the service road. How does this affect the public? Currently, we have already relocated the Metro bus stops on the southbound street service road and detour the vehicular traffic on the southbound service road at Coral Street. Lastly, there will be a few restricted parking spots, mostly for allowing Metro buses the space they need to turn on Coral Street and not damage any vehicles. These are typically reopened at the end of each workday and for the weekends. Now let's get into the 3 construction phases. Phase 1. As previously stated, we will be demoing the 2 existing buildings on the east side, and that will allow the space to construct the ADA compliant east ramp and abutment. In conjunction, we'll be working on the west access ramp and abutment structures, and lastly, improving the sidewalks and crosswalks along the service road. Both these ramps have drilled caissons, rebar placement with formwork, some retaining wall work, and a lot of concrete. So how does this affect the public? We will be relocating the northbound Metro bus stop on the service road and have a pedestrian detour that will move the pedestrians off the sidewalk and onto the street, but have safety barriers according to the plans. Lastly, there will be some restricted parking in the phase as well. So now let's get into the most critical part of the project and the part that will impact the public the most, and that is phase 2. Phase 2 is where the existing bridge that goes over 295 will be demolished and the new bridge will be installed. Let's get into how this impacts the public. The pedestrian bridge closure for the public will only last for 2 weeks. The pedestrian detour for this time will be moved to the Nash Street pedestrian bridge. Prior to this occurring, there will be extensive public outreach to keep the public notified for the dates of this occurring. But for now, let's look at that detour. Andy, can you put the cursor over the existing Douglas Street pedestrian bridge so that everyone can get orientated on this slide? Thanks. We'll be moving the public south on the Kenilworth Avenue to the Nash Street pedestrian bridge, as Andy's showing on the screen now. We will make sure that this detour is properly signed and ADA compliant during this period. Again, there will be additional public outreach before we implement this. So moving on to phase 3. Phase 3 is to install the final improvements for the project that include the restoration of the asphalt within the project corridor. Additionally, the pavement markings and signage will be updated. Lastly, there will be landscaping and some bioretention areas placed on the project. So how does this phase 3 impact the public? The impact will be much smaller with only daytime lane closures and some pedestrian detours around the active work zones. So that is a summary of each phase. So let's talk about the timeline for completing each phase. So construction started in the end of 2021, and we are currently in the pre-phase work with starting the 3 construction phases soon. I'd like to highlight on this slide that we will, with our current schedule, the project looks to open the new pedestrian bridge at the end of the summer of this year. Once the 3 construction phases are complete, punch lists and closeout efforts will be completed and wrapped up by the end of the year. Some other things that should be expected during construction are the construction hours are typically between 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. Saturdays and Sundays aren't anticipated at this time, but may be necessary due to weather or other events. Events such as the demolition and installation of the bridge itself will be during the night hours and will even close 295 for periods of up to 20 minutes at a time. Again, prior to these events, there will be an extensive public outreach. In order to complete the construction, the project will execute lane closures and detours for vehicles and pedestrians. We will be using the high visibility devices to help assist the public around the work zone. All detours will be properly signed. We do ask, though, that you please respect the work zones so that we can complete this project as quickly as possible and turn it over to the public. I will now turn this over to Shayna to talk to you about staying in contact with the project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shayna Vieira. I am with JDOS International, a small women-owned business doing business here in the DC area with DDOT for over 25 years. I've been working in the area for a while now. Our last project in this area was Nanny Helen Burroughs reconstruction, so we're really excited to be back on this project. We are fully involved with the public and want to make sure that every concern is heard, every question is answered. You can contact me directly through my email, sviera@jdosinternational.com, and I'll put that here in the chat. You can also find additional information on our website, which is full of information about the project. I'll also put that in the chat as well. So we have a dedicated website, a monthly newsletter, and also we issue all of the traffic advisories that go out ahead of any changes in the construction maintenance of traffic. So here you can stay connected and you can see all of the project engineers and managers here, and then you can also visit the site via this link and the link that I've put in the chat. Thank you so much. Also, as a participant in this meeting, we ask that you complete the Title 6 form. As a recipient of the federal assistant, DDOT must ensure that all of its programs, activities, and public meetings are conducted in compliance with the Title 6 of Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act ensures non-discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. The Title VI Public Meeting Participant Questionnaire is used to help DDOT ensure that we are informing the public and conducting our meetings in a non-discriminatory manner in compliance with the Title VI. Project comments and/or concerns may also be submitted through this form. We appreciate anyone who is willing to complete the form, and thank you so much for your participation. We'll now move forward with questions and answers. I think we've completed that portion of the presentation today. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we will answer them here live.
Hey, Shayna or Molly, do we have any questions that have come through the chat yet?
Yes, hello. There are actually a few questions in the Q&A. So please
Oh.
put your questions in the Q&A, not the chat.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Can you please, oops. Thank you everyone for using the Q&A. That was my bad. First question, can you please provide notice when water will be out? The water was out on Saturday to some residents without notice. Andy, do you or Chris, do you have a response to that? We usually put out all notices, well, all of the traffic advisories that involve the roadway closures happen through DDOT and myself. I issue those advisories as well if there are any water shutoffs. But normally DC Water, if they're working in the area, they issue their own public advisory of any water shutoff. So Andy or Chris, do you want to answer or respond to what might have happened this Saturday?
Yes, this is Chris Vovak. This, I believe this is not part of the project at all. They were not working on Saturday. Um, and at this point, my understanding is DC Water is is not allowing shutoffs for the water main that we need until further notice. So, but I can double check on this if you put your information in the chat, and I can double check on this and get you any more information about that.
Thank you so much, Chris. Next question is about cameras on the bridge. I don't see any cameras as part of your safety upgrades. There's been a lot of crime in the area where police are always asking for footage from our cameras. If there are cameras on the footbridge that all criminals would run over, would help things in the area greatly and should be incorporated.
Yeah, thanks, Shayna. That is something, we're aware of on the construction side. That's currently not in the scope of work for the project. And David or Patrick, if you have anything to add on to, obviously it stems from the design phase, but it's currently not in the construction scope.
Right. I think that's a carryover from the original bridge where we didn't have any cameras then. Now, DDOT would not normally put cameras in for security purposes. That would be the police. We have put cameras in on certain bridges to monitor traffic conditions. So I think when you know, we went to all stakeholders, including the police, there was not a requirement for cameras at this location. I believe, however, Andy, there are cameras on the new bridge that's just been opened, but I believe, are they focused onto the traffic or are they focused onto the bridge for users, and were they sponsored by the police? Are they being monitored? Are they being recorded by the police? Do you know?
You're referring to Parkside?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, but we can
Yeah.
probably research that answer and follow
Yeah,
up
I think
whether
we
the
may.
traffic cameras are.
Yeah, we did introduce cameras onto that bridge, and I'm not sure whether it was the police or that wasn't my project, whether it was the police or whether it was DDOT for traffic purposes. Now we do have loops in the road to monitor traffic in this area, so we would not, DDOT would not necessarily include into the specification a need for cameras. So that's all I can say on this at the moment. We could reach out to the police again and see if they would, have changed their position on that in any way. But at this time, we do have we do have relatively short ramps compared to the other bridges, and we'll be removing the signage from the bridge. They will be mounted on ground-mounted signs so that there will be clear visibility of the main span from either ramps. There's also the staircases that are being introduced as an alternate access egress route. And I think that's as far as we're going here thus far on the specification for security.
Thank you, David. The next question is about door hangers. On our last project for Nanny Helen Burroughs, we did do door hangers, and you said, let me see, let me actually just read the question. Please note that door hangers from Eastern Avenue to Nanny Helen Burroughs Avenue, down Kennelworth Avenue back to Anacostia is needed for all outreach efforts. The community outreach for tonight's meeting was not as great as promised. During the Nash Street Bridge meeting, communication is key. Yes, I definitely agree that communication is key, and door hangers are a great addition to other outreach efforts. And while we did stop door hangers during the height of the pandemic, I think it's a great time to bring that back, particularly in this area. And I was talking to Andy and Chris before our call today to just kind of talk about additional outreach efforts. And while I wasn't at the Nash Street meeting, I definitely think that you're correct that additional materials can be passed out. So we'll definitely take that into consideration and move forward with some additional pamphlets. Okay, moving on to the next question. How are you addressing traffic that is detouring into the Eastland Gardens neighborhood?
Yeah, Shane, I'll take a response to this. So that's the current and the pre-phase work that Chris spoke about. There is a need to do a detour of the southbound Kenilworth Avenue right there at Quarles, and then it goes up to Anacostia Avenue and back around to the service road. Yeah, that is something we are aware of. We are trying every effort where we don't absolutely need it in place to open it up. So this includes weekends, as well as after hours. And again, this is so that we can install the DC water utilities just during this pre-phase of work. We're estimating that's just maybe a few more weeks, sometime in February. We will not have to utilize that detour anymore, and the southbound service road vehicles will be able to access that and not have to use the detour. So I guess I can say we hear you, we understand it's an inconvenience, and it's something that we're trying to expedite. And whenever the crews aren't there, we try to open up as soon as possible so we don't have to utilize that detour.
Thank you so much, Andy. We got a clarification from Eddie about the water issue. He said, FYI, the water shutoff water issue was related to a water main issue, and the water shutoff was a mistake that took out the affected area and Douglas. Thank you so much for that. Next question. Have you noticed that the small bridge down Anacostia Avenue before Polk has a weight limit which could prevent certain trucks from using it? I think you might have mentioned that, Andy, in one of your last responses, but if you'd like to respond to that.
Yes, I guess my response would be, I mean, if vehicles are not following the posted weight limit, I mean, then the vehicles are in violation of that while they're utilizing the detour. I will take a look here, maybe there's something we can do around signage, maybe further advanced notification closer to Eastern Avenue. Detours for local traffic only, and that vehicles of a certain weight limit should not be proceeding. So I definitely note that comment. I think as a team, we will look into to see if there's a better solution to that.
We'll take a look at that too, Andy. I don't know what the weight limit is. A lot of the time, the weight limit is associated with special trucks with certain axle weights that you don't habitually see on a frequent basis, but it's worth checking into. So I'll take a look at that from DDOT's perspective, also with our bridge team. Thank you.
Thank you both. The following question is it common to have increased home vibrations from these heavy trucks which cause issues with houses in the area?
Andrew, I'd like to ask you another question from the construction management team. This particular detour will be in place for how long? And is it a temporary condition? Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct, David. We're probably about approximately 3 weeks out from being done with the detour. It's just needed to wrap up this underground DC water work. And once we have that completed, the detour is not needed for the remainder of the project.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear.
Following question. Oh, go ahead.
I'll just say in regards to the vibrations, I myself, I'm sure Chris, we'd be willing to meet on site with any of these residents, and we can kind of maybe see some of your concerns in person. If you can provide Shana some contact information and some available times, you'd be available to meet on site.
Definitely, I think that's a great idea to do a brief walkthrough.
Thank you. Yeah, there are other mitigation measures that can be introduced, but in this short period, if if you're out there, you're experiencing something that you know your experience says we should do something about, we'll take care of it and reduce speeds, etc. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next question. There may be a conflict between Nash Street Bridge being complete while the Douglas Street Bridge is closed. Do you all have any comment on that?
So just to clarify, I think Nash Street is not one of the ones that's going to be replaced. David can correct me if I'm incorrect. It's Douglas Street being done now in this year, 2022. And then the next project to follow is the Lane Street Bridge, which is, of course, the one that was struck and collapsed back in the summer of 2021. So I think what David mentioned up front is that's what we're trying to avoid. That's why we're expediting construction. And you're just hearing from us now through this public meeting when we already broke some ground. We're expediting construction of Douglas Street so that there's not a conflict between Douglas and the Lane Street Bridge replacement.
Thank you, Andy. And as for Nash Bridge, the removal replacement is as yet undecided. Thank you.
Thank you both. Excuse me. Let me get to the next question. How will you address the damage to the roadways in Eastland Garden and Kennelworth? You did mention this before in terms of the detouring traffic that's going through these areas. Andy, did you or David have anything to add here?
From a construction standpoint, I again would say maybe, Chris and I meet with the residents here. We can do a walkthrough. If there truly is excessive damage to the roadway from our construction, I think that's something that the team would obviously be willing to address and repair. But I think that's something we need to take a look at in person.
Okay. Along the same lines, please note the community have been advocating for no quarter-ton vehicles entering the community, and those signs are to be posted soon.
I agree. Like we said on one of the first questions, maybe we need to do a review of the signage and do see if there's some improvements that can be made.
Thank you. Following question from Eddie. During the last 295 detour and the redirection of traffic down Anacostia Avenue, it caused issues with the largest trucks due to the weight limit on the bridge between Polk and Douglas. We did respond to kind of the weight limits and making sure the truckers adhere to that. Andy, did you have anything to add?
That's an excellent point, actually, because Eddie's probably aware here, when we install the new bridge and do demolition, we're going to have short stoppages completely of all traffic on 295. So if there was a large queue that stretched back to the next bridge, that would be something that would be of concern. I mean, a measure to facilitate this is definitely, as Chris mentioned, I think we kind of stressed, is we really want to have a lot of public outreach before we get to that activity, and that includes more than just traffic advisories. I think we need to reach out, to folks with SHA in Maryland, the National Park Service, since the BW Parkway is so close by, and kind of get that message out of when these closures are coming so that, folks can begin to plan alternative routes, and hopefully we can avoid those queues. Additionally, our team was obviously going to be present on site during these closures. We're going to be monitoring traffic. We'll have contingency measures so that if we need to release traffic to let the queue kind of get through the work zone, I think that's a contingency measure that we will put in our plan. So that's an excellent point. I appreciate the comment.
Thank you so much. And the final comment that we have here is from Sharita. How does this work with the current construction on the northbound Kenilworth Avenue? The pictures that you are showing are old and some removal has taken place.
Right. Yeah, some of those photos were upwards a couple weeks ago. So currently right now, there's two projects adjacent to each other in this corridor. We have the DC 295 Safety Improvement Project, which is wrapping up here. And a lot of our initial phases of work here is going to be very similar kind of MOT traffic setups to what they're doing. So some of the work that you see out there, we have crews on the southbound service road, as well as some MOT devices set up on the northbound service road. And in regards to the other project, we're in constant communication with that project team to make sure that there is no conflict between what their traffic control measures are and what ours are, so that we don't, incorrectly impact the public. So that's something that we're coordinating on a daily basis. In just a couple months there, that 295 safety improvement project will be out of the corridor, and it will just be this project.
Thanks, Andy. There is a certain degree of overlap on those projects. It's going to be for a very brief, short period of time. There will be some realignments of work completed. We brought this project forward as soon as we could to achieve completion of this project and to achieve completion of the Lane Bridge replacement within those 3 years that the mayor specified. So when I mentioned earlier that we expedited the procurement procedures and selection procedures for our consultants, that was the impetus. It was the mayor's order, and so we've got a little bit of overlap, but it's not causing it. It's the same contractor actually, and it's not. They're going to mitigate any reworking. So thank you.
Thank you for that. We do have one comment that I missed, asking for clarification. You mentioned that you were diverting traffic to Nash Street while Douglas Street was closed. If you could clarify your comments on that, Andy.
Yeah, Chris, I'll pull up the slide here. We just want to talk to that. To be clear, it's a pedestrian detour.
Yeah, this is Chris. Yeah, it's not vehicular traffic, it's pedestrian traffic. So he's bringing up the slide now. Give him a second. Keep going. Nope, right there. Yeah, this is a slide. It's in phase 2 for the 2 weeks. It's going to be, you can see where the Douglas Street bridge is, and then we're going to be going south and having pedestrian traffic move to the Nash Street pedestrian crossover.
Right, and to clarify, so Shana, we're looking at approximately a 2-week period from when we start demolition of the bridge until the new bridge is installed and have it open to the public. So this detour that you see up on the screen, again, detour for pedestrians using the existing Douglas Street Bridge. This will be in place for approximately 2 weeks.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so we do have another question regarding the bridge again on Anacostia, looking for some additional clarification. The question reads, the question in regards to the bridge on Anacostia, once a truck is rerouted and stuck, where are they supposed to go? They can't turn around. Up Douglas, the street is closed. Back to Quarles, they would have to go against to one-way street, Kennelworth, to avoid crossing the bridge. They essentially are trapped. Are those weight limits posted prior to Eastern Avenue right before going on Kennelworth? So I think they're trying to clarify, kind of say basically that the weight limits need to be posted beforehand before they get to these intersections.
Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead, David.
Well, I've been a bridge designer for many years, and I realize how bridges are posted for certain weight limits. I realize the degree of play there is in that posting. And that's not to say, that what I'd like to do is identify what that weight limit is and look at the likelihood of that particular vehicle, because there are some vehicles that just escape the norm, and whether those vehicles, whether there's a likelihood of those vehicles going across that bridge, and also to identify and assess whether that whatever vehicles are traveling across there would in fact jeopardize the bridge in any way. A lot of the time we're putting weight limits on bridge because of components of the bridge resisting that load. And but I'd like to identify specifically what the weight limit is, when it was imposed, and there are still other options to consider as opposed to not letting a vehicle cross a bridge. So I'd like to look into that, and I'll have our team look into that. And if the bridge is in any way compromised, that's something we don't do. You know, we will implement measures to guard against that.
Thank you so much. In regards to the site visits, if anyone has any questions or would like to participate in the site visit, you can email me. I just put my email in the chat. So please do email me directly. You can also, there's a link on the website that also links to my email. And I'm happy to schedule this. The next question, are you working with the developers in Kennelworth that is currently taking place?
Can you repeat that last question, please?
Sure, absolutely. Are you working with the developers that are working on Kenilworth Avenue, that on Kenilworth Avenue project that is currently taking place?
Well, I'm responsible for both those projects, and we have two other individuals here as our supervisory civil engineer, Patrick Ogbade, and our project engineer for that project. There are both of these projects. There's a significant degree of knowledge shared because they're running the contractor and the construction management of that project as well as this one. So yes, everything is being shared. And as I said earlier, it's the same contractor.
David?
Yes?
Yeah, I think the question is, we are not responsible or we do not participate in the development of those buildings, but for the roadways, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is this for, I thought this was the
He's talking of Kennelworth Court.
Kenilworth
Well,
Court?
the question wasn't very clear. Sharita, if you could come back and clarify your question. Are you referring to the development of buildings, or are we talking about the roadway projects? Because this presentation is just with DDOT, that's just focused on the roadway infrastructure. So if you could clarify that, that would be great, and then we can come back with a response.
Kenilworth Avenue, which is one of our other projects, but if it's not, then yeah. Please clarify.
Thank you. Molly, do we have any questions on the Facebook live stream?
There are no questions there. I do want to remind folks, if you dialed in directly on the phone, you clearly cannot access the Q&A. However, if you do have a question you would like to speak up about, you can dial *3 or *3 on your dial pad or keypad on your mobile device, and we will know that your hand has been raised and we can unmute you. Additionally, if there are any folks who've joined on WebEx and would also like to raise their hand and speak, you can access the raise hand function by going to the participants panel in the bottom right-hand corner and looking for the raise hand icon. And if you've joined on mobile or the browser, there should be a 3-dot icon option for more options, and so a raise hand should be in there.
Thank you so much, Molly. Our WebEx extraordinaire. Okay, thank you, Sharita, for clarifying. The last question in which we talked about the Kenilworth development, she has clarified and says, I was referencing the Kenilworth development and the development at Eastern Avenue. If we are also coordinating with that project.
Yeah, regarding that project, I think DDOT, which is right now, I think the developer, they are just busy doing the building. So once this building is done, then they start on the roadway. Yes, it will become part of our project, and we're going to be helping to manage the project, the roadway project, to ensure that it meets DDOT standards. For now, whatever they are doing there regarding the building, DDOT has no business. Whatever they are doing regarding those development of the building.
Actually, is it Kenilworth Courts that we're talking about here?
I think that's what she said by Eastern Avenue. That's the Kenilworth Court.
If it is Kenilworth Courts, then I don't think there's any direct conflict between the MOT scheme between these two projects at all. There's nothing on one that would influence the other. Yeah. If there is, please do bring it to our attention. So is that something, Andy, that you can look out for also? You can just take a spin up the road there and see what they're doing.
Any other questions come up, Shayna?
I do
I'm
want to.
sorry, I was speaking and I was on mute. Sorry about that. So yeah, so just kind of referring to the same development project, Ms. Sharita said that they are concerned about project vehicles and infrastructure, including the water lines, as the kind of several large vehicles detour through the community.
Thank you. You know, as previously mentioned, we are mitigating by reducing the time periods for these detours as much as possible. Please do bear with us over the next 2 to 3 weeks when this detour in particular will be in place, and we'll try to get out of your hair as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Does anyone have any additional questions?
So we do have one hand raised,
Okay.
Shayna. Eddie, we are unmuting you now. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, guys. Thanks. I think we hit the nail on the head towards the end there. What we were thinking was the long-term issues, and not just the new shutdown now, but the shutdown in the summertime with the construction of Kenilworth Courts and with all the heavy equipment that will be coming in. That bridge between Douglas and Polk, I think, is something like, I don't know, 1.5 tons or something like that, right? And if you have all this heavy equipment coming in to be doing sewage, to, you know, all the prefab construction that's coming in, all the trucks that are going to come over that, that's going to cause issues. And those signs were specifically posted when the last bridge came down and we needed to reroute all the southbound 295 traffic through there. And the city put up signs that put on a weight limit. And whenever a big truck had to stop at that sign to figure out, do I risk it or do I run it? You know, that's where we started to run into some issues with traffic backing up throughout the whole neighborhood. And that's what I want to bring to light, is that if that weight limit is correct and these big construction trucks are not going to be able to come over it in the next few weeks, but especially in the summertime, during that 2-week shutdown of 295, when that bridge is going to be assembled.
Thank you. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Now, we'll get on this week. We'll take photographs, we'll get out there, we'll see what is the actual posting. I don't know if that was actual weight you were talking about there or total weight, but and you know, the plans were reviewed by the bridge department, and are few people within the bridge department who are responsible for the load ratings on all of our bridges and for any posting. So we will gather this information promptly and share it with them and discuss with them and see if we do indeed have an issue here. It also, I will I'll cross-reference with the other project. You know, we know the project manager very well, who probably implemented those measures that you just described. So, as a bridge guy, I'm the first person who will never ever compromise the structural integrity of any component of a bridge, and so I'll take that personally, and I'll deal with it. Thank you very much, community, for pointing this out to us.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, Eddie, for your question. Molly, do we have any other verbal questions?
There are no other raised hands.
Does anyone have any additional questions that they'd like to put in the Q&A? Okay, well, I think that concludes our Q&A session. Andy or David or any of the project team, if you all have any kind of closing comments that you'd like to share, I'll open the floor to you.
I'd like to thank our consultant, HNTB, for presenting for presenting us with a good idea of what is upcoming for this project over the next, I think it's about 11 months remaining, and also for identifying the critical time period of 2 weeks for removal and replacement of the pedestrian bridge superstructure. Obviously, we're going to be getting our foundations and footings in the ground before then. You'll see a lot of landscape changing when we demolish the existing buildings. But thanks team. I was away for the last couple of weeks. This was put together without me. And we are proposing to, provide regular updates on traffic movements, and we'll probably look to reaching out to the community again just before we do the bridge replacement, whether that's through the ANCs, and we'll endeavor to provide awareness, sufficient awareness for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate your guidance on this project. And Andy and Chris, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, please do email me. Again, my email, I will put it here again in the chat. And you can also visit the website for additional information about the project. We'll be putting out lots more information as Andy said and David said, this project has been fast-tracked. So we are getting out as much information now as possible. And we're going to make sure that we keep the community informed well ahead of any changes that are to come in the future. So thank you so much.